Good Thursday, everybody. You know what time it is. It's time for another edition of the 2-2 Podcast. Listen, I'm so glad and grateful you could join me today. We're continuing our series entitled Unbothered as we wrap up what has been a stellar February. So you know what I'm about to say next. You know the move. Grab your friends, grab your family, grab your coworkers, grab those people you don't like. Don't forget that notebook, that iPad, that laptop, whatever you need to take notes. Let's lock in, y'all. See you in a minute. Have you ever wanted to record a podcast but didn't know the way? Well, I've got good news. Let me tell you about something. It's called Anchor. And Anchor is the easiest way to record a podcast. Let me explain. It's absolutely free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So here's what I need you to do. Please download the free Anchor app or go to Anchor FM to get started. What's going on, everybody? And welcome to today's episode. I want to make a brief shout out. We have officially expanded the 2-2 Podcast to some new platforms. We are officially on Radio Public, Pocket Casts, Spreaker, and now Google Podcasts. I'm so excited to bring the 2-2 Podcast to these new platforms. And I personally believe that this is a season of expansion and exponential growth. I know pandemic, I know 2020 for a lot of us caused our whatever we wanted to do to come to a screeching halt. And now we are in a new year, and now it's time to expand, even in the midst of us being in the middle of this pandemic and us being almost a year into it. Don't stop now. Expansion is coming. Expansion is here. Wait till you see what's next. Again, thank you for your unending support of this podcast. Thank you for all of your positive messages for Tuesday's talk. That was an emotional message, and this one today should be one as well. So buckle your seatbelt, everybody. We are going to have a little talk. But again, thank you. Let's get to work, y'all. Let's talk about a word. Oh, we hear this word a lot. We hear this word on TV. We hear this word on movies. We hear this word within our circles. We hear this word in church. We hear this word in our girl talks. Not very much in our guy talks, and we need to jump on that very often. But we hear this within our small groups if we're having this conversation. It's about closure. Now, oftentimes we hear about closure when we're talking about when a business closes, or for the day, the week, the month, forever. We hear about closure. We hear about the closure of a school. We hear about school closures when there's a snow day, when there's extreme weather. We hear about that, but the type of closure I want to talk about today is the closure when somebody walks away. The closure when somebody breaks our heart. The closure when somebody rejects us. The closure when somebody abandons us. What happens when the closure that we need is not enough? What happens when the walking away is not enough? Let me go even deeper. What happens when the why hurts more? See, Webster's dictionary defines closure in two ways. And please, I encourage you to write this down. It defines closure as, first, of course, you heard me briefly describe it in my own way, as the act of closing, the condition of being closed. Business closures, the closure of a factory are examples of that. But the second definition that Webster's dictionary has says this: that is an often comforting or satisfying sense of finality. An often comforting or satisfying sense of finality. We need to understand the value of closure. The closure comes in so many forms. Sometimes closure comes in being inquisitive. Sometimes closure comes in moving on, running away, walking away. Sometimes the closure, and in all cases, the closure involves healing and restoration. Sometimes closure is quick, and sometimes closure takes a long time. But what happens when our inquisitive nature and our wanting to know why is more painful than walking away from a long-term friendship, a long-term relationship? What happens? If I could be transparent for just a few minutes, just for a brief moment, actually. For a long time, I needed closure for everything. I wanted to know why you walked away. I put time into this. I invested time, oftentimes, a lot, more often than not, time. Sometimes financial resources. Sometimes some way, shape, or I invested my time, my talent, and my treasure to a person. And all of a sudden, they walked away. They put a period where there should be a comma, where I thought should be a comma. And I didn't understand, and I was oblivious to the fact that people walk away. And there are some cases, and yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, there are a lot of cases where we don't need to know why they walked away. What was their reasoning for walking away? I just needed to know why you hurt me so bad. Why did you leave? See, we all have an inquisitive nature to know why. It starts when we're born. It develops as we're newborns. It develops as we're toddlers. It develops as we learn, as we develop a speech pattern. We need to know why. When we're a little kid, we need to know why the sky is blue, and why the grass is green, and why the sun shines, and why are there trees, and why is there air, and why we need to breathe, and why we need to do this. It all starts with that. And then it evolves into, why is this happening to me? Why do I have pimples? And why is my voice changing? And why is this happening? To a point that when we become adults, and we start dating, and we start dating when we're younger, and somebody hurts us and cheats on us, and when friendships come and go, we need to know why that person did what they did. But I need you to understand, for those of you who are at a crossroads right now, that it's just the not knowing is racking their brain. It's causing them some sleepless nights, some nights where they cry endlessly, where they're They're trying to put on a brave face in front of people, but deep down inside it's eating them up, not knowing why they were hurting and they're in pain, and why this person they thought they would love that would love them forever just all of a sudden put a period where they thought there should have been a comma. Period. There are some people in our lives that will put a period where we thought needed a comma. Where they'll stop what we thought needed a needed to continue. But we got to understand that there are some points in our lives when it comes to the people that we are connected to, that there are some people that will need a comma behind what's going on with the dynamic and the connection, and that there are some people that God puts a period. There's a quote on here. There's a quote that I was reading as I was preparing to talk about this, as we talk about periods and commas. There's a quote that it's by Bo Taplin. He said this: "We demand closure as though our lives were put together as neatly as novels. But the fact of the matter is, they're not. In real life, relationships are messy and poorly written, ending too early or too late, and sometimes in the middle of a sentence." That part right there at the end defines a lot of us right now. Well, we had some relationships in our lives that we thought were neatly as novels, but that were messy and poorly written. But because we wanted to stay with this person, because we were with them so long, we put up with the mess. We put up with the poorly written story. And then all of a sudden, when things changed, and people put a period where we thought should have been a comma, where some things ended to, or we wanted to keep it going, and we kept revising that period and making it a comma, and all of a sudden it ended too late, and there was so much damage. And what we thought was neat became a run-on sentence, a jumbled story, a poorly written novel, something that should have ended a long time ago, where we should have looked at the blessing of the period instead of trying to revise it to continue the mess that we're in. We want to continue something for closure purposes. We want to know why. So we'll call that person, and we'll check on that person, and we'll text that person, and we'll do whatever we can to soften that person, to finally tell you why things happened. There are some situations in our lives where we shouldn't allow people to put a period where a comma is. But in this situation that we're talking about right now, as we talk about when the why hurts more, when our inquisitive nature puts us in a realm of pain, worse than anything we've ever been in, worse than we've ever endured, worse than we endured in the relationship, when we need to know why. Sometimes you have to understand the blessing in the period. I'm grateful that God allowed the people to put periods where I thought commas should have been. I'm glad that God ended some things that I wanted to continue. I'm glad God gave me the strength to walk away. There's somebody right now that doesn't have the strength to walk away from something that they should have walked away from a long time ago. And this is no indictment on somebody that's oblivious to the signs that something is ending, that something's not right. But I need somebody to understand the blessing in the period. I know it hurts. I know it's painful. But there's a blessing in walking away. I need somebody to understand that the closure we seek, that we think we so desperately need, is not the closure that we honestly want. Because it's going to leave you in worse shape than you already are. I know your novel, I know your story with this person ended in the middle of a sentence where you thought there was progress that was going to happen, that you thought there was progress taking place, that there was expansion taking place, that you could take things to the next level, that you were planning a future with that person. Understand. But I heard a saying. There's a quote that oftentimes I think of all the time when I want to reach out to somebody and ask them why they stopped talking to me and why the relationship didn't work well, why things didn't happen. I think of this saying: when God blocked it, don't stalk it. Don't call it. Don't text it. Don't check up on it. One of my favorite pastors, his name is John Jenkins, First Baptist Church of Glen Arden. He did a message called Leave the Honey Alone. Leave the honey alone. And that is the ultimate. And I encourage you, it's on YouTube. I encourage you to watch that message. I watch that message every time I think of all the times that I want to reach out to a person that did me wrong. And all of the times I want to ask them why they waited so late to tell me what's going on, or why something ended. It reminds me of that message to leave the honey alone. If God blocked it, don't stalk it. If God told you to walk away, then walk away. And don't ask why. Sometimes you got to, trust in Him at all times. The Bible talks about that. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and all your mind. And lean not on your own understanding. We have to be. It is okay. I need you to understand that it's okay to be inquisitive. And there will be some situations in life. There will be some situations that you have where you need to ask questions. There will be some periods in your life where you need to know the reason and rationale. But for those situations where God allowed people to put a period, where you thought needed to be a comma, leave it there. Don't edit it. Move on to the next chapter in your life. Even if it involves not dealing with a person and not hitting that person up and not asking why that person's not going to the next level with you. Everybody's not intended to go to the next level with you. Because there are some people, and I know, what does this have to do with closure? But I need you to understand that some people aren't intended to go to the next level with you, or that next period of elevation, because some people haven't trained to go to the next level. Imagine a mountain climber climbing Mount Everest. That there are some people that don't understand why you're climbing that mountain, or why you're trying to go to this next level, and why you're trying to do this next thing, and why you're expanding. They don't understand why. You're in a pandemic, this, that, and the third. And that's because there are some people in your life that can't sustain themselves on that next level. But I need you to stay the course and learn when to walk away, know when to run away, and know when to ask questions. Because sometimes closure is louder when it's silent, when you don't ask questions, when you just walk away. I want to give a few things before we see how we are on time. I want to give a few things, a few ways that we can get closure and move forward when we don't have the closure that we seek. And I encourage you to look at this. I encourage you to do this yourself. First thing is, get your power back. Medium.com, this lady who wrote this article on Medium.com, I encourage you to read this as well. She said, and these are a few things. These are some things that these aren't my own opinion. These are some things right here from an article that I had been reading and to do research. And here we go. And I believe this is. I'm gonna read a couple of these and we'll move forward. First one for me is something that I always needed to work on. And it's taking your control back, taking your power back. In giving your power away to someone else, you are saying, I cannot move past this experience until you give me closure. Here's a better way of saying it. What consumes your mind controls your life. What consumes your mind controls your life. What are you allowing to consume your mind? What past relationship are you allowing to consume your mind? What relationship from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago? What is consuming your mind? What period or point of rejection is consuming your mind right now? I want you to think about that. Because what's consuming your mind controls your life. We are controlled by what we thought. Here's why I always talk about on this show. Watch your thoughts. They become your words. Your words become your actions. Your actions become your habits. Your habits become your character. And your character becomes your destiny. What controls your thoughts? What are you thinking of every day? What consumes your mind? It's going to control your life. Wanting to get closure from somebody that you were intended to walk away from. What controls your life? And it's easier said than done to control your thoughts. It's, hey. It's hard. I'll be honest with you. I'm in a period in my life and where, I've been playing tennis for a long time. And I've been playing tennis since I was a little kid and just came back to the game last year. and what consumes my thoughts from time to time. And sometimes it can be my biggest motivation, but sometimes it can be my greatest downfall. Sometimes it's just being consumed by wanting to win and beat everybody. And oftentimes I need to learn how to start over again and play my best and learn the basics first before I try to do anything else. You don't want to rush anything, but sometimes wanting to be better and do better and you know compete with everybody that's been playing consistently for a long time consumes my thoughts. And there's a point in your life where you have to learn how to control what you think. You can't control somebody else's actions, but you can control what you do. You can't control people leaving, but you can control what you do. I know it hurts that they left. I know it hurts that they hurt you. I know it hurts that they dipped out, but you can control what you do. You can control your response. How will you control your response in a season where people have rejected you? I believe that at this point, it's time to find a point of release. I talked about the point of release on Tuesday on Instagram. I didn't really talk about it. I mean, I talked about it, but I didn't call it the point of release until I made a post about it on Tuesday. There's a point in your life where you have to learn how to release. What is your point of release? What is that? How will you do that? It's a point of release is part of self-care. Finding a way to walk away, to release every bad thing that ever happened, every bad thing that's happened. Our closure is oftentimes in not being inquisitive, but walking away and never looking back. So I encourage you, as you go into your weekend, to really, really take some time, do some inventory, do some inspection. Know when to ask questions and know when to walk away. I know it's hard sometimes to walk away, and I know I keep saying that, but I just need to reiterate it to somebody that's saying to me right now, Stevens, it's easier said than done. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know the pain that person caused. You don't know how I thought we'd be forever. I understand how you feel. I've been in that place where I thought we'd be forever. One last example. I had a friendship where I thought we'd be friends forever. We'd grow old. We'd go on couples trips. We'd be in each other's weddings. We'd celebrate the birth of children. We'd celebrate celebrate graduations, birthdays together. We would do things together. We would, pray together, worship together. We'd go to church together, go to dinner. I thought we would be friends forever. All of a sudden, here it is again. Let me go back to it. It's all coming full circle. Where we went back to this quote. Where we thought, here it is. And let me get back to it real quick. I'll read it again. We demand closure as though our lives were put together as neatly as novels. But the fact of the matter is, they're not. In real life, relationships are messy and poorly written, ending too early or too late, and sometimes in the middle of a sentence. We demand closure as if we think our lives are as neatly as novels, when in fact they're not. And I thought our friendship was this neat novel. And I thought it would continue. And I thought some relationships that I was in would continue. And I learned the hard way this year. I didn't learn the hard way this year. I prayed for a situation like this, that Lord, whatever friendships and relationships I shouldn't carry into this year, put a period where I thought there should have been a comma. You end it. You keep it there. Yeah. And the other part about that is I wouldn't ask why. But in this situation, it was because of this situation I became who I am now, where I don't ask why. I just go, Lord, listen, it ended. It hurts. But I know there's a reason behind it. And I know that it's needed for me to move on and to grow. But at this time, I wasn't praying that, and I wasn't there at that point. I was at a period in my life where I, like I said, needed to know why. And that was the breaking point for me, because I finally said enough is enough. If they want to walk away, let them walk away. But in this period in my life and in this season, I have to grow. I have to mature. I have to do better. And sometimes my better involves people not being there, not being in my life, not going to the next level, not going with me into a next season, not going with me into another day, not going into a new week, not going into a new month, a new year. And I have to understand the pain in that, but I have to understand that there's more pain in asking why. So I encourage you this week to do inventory of those things in your life that you have held on to for such a long time, that you felt that you needed closure for, that you felt that you needed to know why. When your closure was in walking away. I ask again, as I wrap this episode up, as we close on what has been a really great, revealing, freeing week where we've released some things. I want to ask you again, what happens when the why hurts more? And how will you respond when a period is put where you thought a comma was supposed to be? How will you respond when you no longer want to edit what should have stopped? I encourage you to look at that this weekend, going into your week. It's time to release some things in your life that have held you back, including some people and some thoughts of wanting to ask why. Let's grow and let's heal together. Have a great, great, great weekend. Hey, listen, thank you for joining the show today. Don't forget to follow the show page and my personal page. The show page is 22 underscore podcast. That is 22 underscore podcast on Instagram. And my personal page at Alex J underscore live. That is Alex J underscore live. Please don't forget the 22 podcast has merch. That's on 22apparel.threadless.com. That is 22apparel.threadless.com. See you soon.